Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Yonit Arthur. I'm an audiologist and strength coach, and I specialize in vestibular disorders. At this point in my career, I work exclusively with people who have chronic dizziness. This is my channel, The Steady Coach. And today's video is for friends, family, and loved ones of people who are suffering from chronic dizziness. We're going to talk about 3 different topics in today's video. First, we're going to talk about what chronic dizziness is and isn't. Then we're going to talk a little bit about what your friend, loved one, or family member might be experiencing. And finally, I'm going to talk about some ways to help. So if your person is suffering from chronic dizziness, you've probably seen multiple doctors at this point with no clear answer. One doctor may be giving you one explanation, one doctor may be giving you another, and some of them might be giving you no useful explanation at all. So I want to explain a little bit about why this is, but to understand this, you first need to understand that chronic dizziness is biopsychosocial. In fact, all diseases and illnesses are biopsychosocial. And by that, what I mean is there is usually some kind of biological cause. And that's the cause that medical physicians, surgeons, and other medical professionals are trained to look for. In some cases, the biological cause is the big contributor to someone's symptoms. For example, when someone has a tumor that's pressing on a nerve, that could very clearly cause issues with pain. But there will always, no matter how strong of a biological cause there is, be psychosocial components that influences the person's experience. There's a story that we tell in my field a whole lot, and that's the story of the 2 nails. So very quickly here, a Canadian construction worker had a nail go through his boot. It went right through the middle, and he found himself in excruciating pain. He was given some painkillers, he even passed out from the pain, and when he got to the hospital, they cut away the boot, and they found that the nail had gone right in between 2 of his toes. So his skin was completely unharmed. But his brain had expected or anticipated pain, and therefore it made the experience of pain. In contrast, the other story goes like this. A man was working on a project at home, one of the nails went missing, he didn't think too much about it, and then the next day he had a little bit of a toothache, so he went to the dentist, they took x-rays, and they found the nail had gone right through his jaw. His brain in this case was not anticipating pain, and so therefore it didn't create the perception of pain. So this biopsychosocial term refers to the fact that our experience of any disease or illness, no matter whether it has a strong biological cause like a nail or not, is always going to be influenced by psychosocial factors. Now, if you've worked with physicians who know something about chronic dizziness, they probably have mentioned something about anxiety, implying sometimes that someone's just anxious or has some kind of chemical imbalance that's leading that person to be anxious, and this is causing the dizziness. And it's important to understand that that is actually not what I mean when I'm talking about psychosocial components. Psychosocial components refer to the entire context of the person who has the dizziness. That person's mental health, that person's stress levels, that person's past stress levels, attitudes about illness in the person's family when he or she was brought up, attitudes in the family now, your support, physician support or lack thereof, all of those things combine to tell the brain when it should and shouldn't predict this experience of pain or dizziness. Now, you may not know this, but the brain actually doesn't sit around just responding to things as they happen and interpreting what happens. It doesn't sit around waiting for a nail to go through the boot before sending out a signal of pain. It predicts what's going to happen in the split seconds before something happens, and then it compares the sense information it gets from the body to its predictions to see if it is responding appropriately. This takes a lot less bandwidth than if it just had to respond to all the raw data coming in all the time. So, if someone's brain is primed to see threat, that person is much more likely to experience something like symptoms. In this case, and in this video, like chronic pain and chronic dizziness. So the takeaway message here is that no matter what you have been told about the biological causes of your loved one or friend's dizziness, even if there was some kind of medical cause that originally set it off, the brain will usually adapt to these changes and stop producing dizziness within a few weeks. I usually say about 6 weeks. If the dizziness is persisting beyond this point, then we're looking at psychosocial causes keeping the dizziness going. And that's going to lead me into our discussion of what chronic dizziness actually is. Chronic dizziness is a type of psychophysiological disorder. And when I say psychophysiological disorder, some people with chronic dizziness are insulted because they say, my symptoms are real. Are you saying it's all in my head? And that is not at all what I'm saying. When I say psychophysiological disorder, I mean that there are true physical changes in your body that are leading to symptoms, but these changes are not the result, or not primarily the result, of some kind of disease or biological process. They originate in or are kept going by psychosocial factors. Don't believe that this is possible? Well, think about the last time that you had to give a big presentation or to stand up in front of a group of people to give a talk. For most of us, that means that our palms might get sweaty and our hands might get cold. So what you're noticing here in this situation is just a thought. Before you even go on stage, before you even stand up to give your presentation, your thoughts and predictions are telling your brain, hey, there's gonna be a threat. Let's take the blood from the hands and move it toward the center of the body so that you're ready to fight or flee. So fight or flight response when you're faced with this danger. This is also known as a sympathetic nervous system response. Again, because your brain works based on predictions, not based on responses, it makes complete sense that it would use your emotional state and your thoughts to make predictions about how it should start to respond physically. And I can give you several more examples of when this happens. Do you ever get butterflies in your stomach before you do something a little bit scary? Have you ever gotten mad and see red? Do you get stomach upset before a big day? These are all examples of this same psychophysiological process. It is a completely normal response of your nervous system. So when someone has chronic dizziness, their nervous system gets stuck in this fight or flight response. Again, even when someone starts with a biological origin to his or her dizziness, that usually clears up within a few weeks, in most cases, unless there is an active disease process. And most of the time, those diseases are easy to diagnose and identify through laboratory testing and imaging. Most of my clients have had those tests done and have come back completely clean on all of them, and yet they're still dizzy. So no matter what those original biological causes were, if the nervous system is in a state of fight or flight for an extended period of time, it's going to start making errors. When your brain anticipates stress, when it anticipates threat, it cannot function properly. Here's an example. Have you ever been around a screaming child? Whether you yourself have kids or not, we're all kind of hardwired to go immediately into that threat response when we hear someone screaming. What if I asked you to do a really complicated math problem while there was a child sitting next to you yelling? Would you be able to do it? Of course not. And it's not because of the distraction, it's because your brain is in danger mode at that time. And when your brain is in danger mode, all of the systems that help us stay logical and calm go offline, and all of the systems that help us respond to danger come online and stay online. So for the person that you love or know who has chronic dizziness, this process is happening all the time throughout the day. This is what is keeping those symptoms going. Let's talk about what that's like. The most important thing for you to understand is because these symptoms are psychophysiological, meaning they're actually real, they're coming from real changes in the body, they are extremely scary, horrific, and terrifying feelings because they are 100% real. Like pain, dizziness is the brain's way of telling you to stop. So your person's brain is basically telling them to stop doing anything. And it's a very hard signal to ignore. Why? Because our body wants to send a very strong signal to us that actually makes us stop when we're under threat. So the reason the dizziness feels as awful as it does is because that's exactly what the nervous system is choosing to do. In the recovery story section of my channel, you can listen to some interviews that I've done with people who've gone through this and gotten better. And in those videos, you'll hear descriptions of what their daily life was like. It is absolutely horrific, and it's not just anxiety. It's not just that your person is really upset and is hallucinating symptoms. They are 100% real symptoms. So it is very important before you even move forward. In this video, it's very important for you to acknowledge and understand that. And this is true for things like pain as well. The example I often give is if you've ever seen a small child fall at the playground and mom rushes over really worried, the child seems to cry more and feel more pain, whereas if the child gets kind of ignored, the child will get up and keep going. Our experience of pain and our experience of dizziness is highly influenced by the attitudes and beliefs of the people around us. So you have an essential role to play in the recovery of your person. Let's talk about some of the things you can do to help your person get through this. The most important thing is to understand what we've talked about already in this video. Your person has an overactive threat response that is keeping this cycle of dizziness symptoms going. In the vast majority of cases, this threat response is as overactive as it is because of stress. Sometimes it's very obvious stress. So many of my clients, when they come to me, they will tell me about an incredibly stressful period of time that led into them coming down with dizziness. But in other cases, it's not as obvious. So one thing you can do is talk to your person about what was going on in his or her life when the dizziness started. When he or she feels down and depressed and is suffering and isn't sure what to do next, keep drawing his or her attention back to this idea that stress is causing this overactive threat response. I have tons of resources on my channel about some of these less subtle and more subtle forms of stress, and I'll link to a video above and below where I go into detail on stress specifically. I also talk extensively about stress in my free course, which I will also link to below. You are more than welcome to take the free course if you are just trying to support someone who has chronic dizziness as well. The second thing you can do is learn some stress reduction techniques and help your person use them when he or she is panicking. The most helpful thing that you can do for someone, if that person is okay with being touched, is to physically anchor the person with your hand and regulate that person's nervous system by being in a calm and relaxed state while you do it. So you can stand or sit next to that person, put your hand on his or her shoulder, take long, deep breaths, especially emphasizing the exhale. Humans are pack animals, and we are influenced by the brain chemistry of those around us. So by having calm brain chemistry yourself, you can help regulate the nervous system of the person who's suffering and help bring that threat response back down. It's like a superpower. I have tons of more information about stress reduction techniques on this channel, and there's going to be more coming. But the best thing that you can do and the easiest thing to do is just slow your breathing down, be there with that person, have physical contact with that person if he or she is okay with it, and maybe speak some comforting words like you're going to be okay and you're going to get through this. This really works. And I know that seems like a very small thing, but you really do have this superpower. In my career as an audiologist, one of my roles was to do Vng tests. So that's video nystagmography testing. This is kind of the standard testing done on people who are suffering from dizziness. And part of the test involves blowing air into someone's ear and actually bringing on dizziness. If you go online, there are tons of horror stories about this test because, again, it's designed to make you dizzy. And if you're already feeling dizzy, it can be really extra scary. But what I learned in my clinical practice is if I put a hand on the shoulder of the person that I was testing and coached him or her on breathing and made sure I was regulating my own nervous system, people got through the test without any problem. In fact, I only ever had to stop the test one time, and I did it hundreds, if not thousands of times. So try this. This is really the best thing you can do for your person when he or she is in crisis. The third thing you can do is remind that person that this is a psychophysiological disorder and he or she is empowered to deal with those psychosocial components. So one thing that I've started to consider an actual symptom of psychophysiological disorders is the doubt that comes with it. Many of the clients that I've worked with have health anxiety to an extreme, often that predated the dizziness. and they're going to compulsively want to see more doctors, try to get more second opinions or third opinions or 100th opinions. Google, go on WebMD, go into support groups and try to get answers there. And this information seeking tends to fuel the fear and distract the person from actually dealing with the stress that's causing the neural circuit dizziness to keep going. So what you can do is gently remind your person, hey, as we've talked about, this is stress related. I know that you're really worried about the symptoms right now, but the symptoms are pulling you away from dealing with the stress that's caused all of these problems in the first place. The next thing you can do, and this is something very important to me, is protect your person from exploitation by people who are trying to capitalize on his or her suffering. And I know that was a very strong statement, but I have seen this over and over again. And I always make the assumption that everyone is really trying to help, and these professionals are trying to do it in the only way they know how. But if a treatment is really, really expensive, we're talking thousands of dollars, and there's not a lot of good research about it, and something about it doesn't quite smell right to you, encourage your person not to do it. Your person also does not need to spend thousands of dollars on online courses and neuroplasticity programs in order to get better. Some people really benefit from that structure, and I have a whole video about my thoughts on neuroplasticity programs that I think is relatively fair and balanced, so I'll also link to that below. But again, in some cases, these programs are exploiting your person's suffering. So if it gives your person hope to do them and he or she feels like it's the right way forward, that's okay. But because your person is suffering and is in threat mode, that part of the brain that makes reasonable, logical decisions and financial decisions especially is not working right. So you need to be there to help talk it through with that person. The next thing you can do is help your person express him or herself emotionally. I talk in depth about this on this channel, but one of the more subtle causes of stress that actually seems to be the big one for many people is that people with chronic dizziness don't feel empowered to speak their emotions. They tend to repress emotions and keep them inside. They tend to be people pleasers and perfectionists who are very hard on themselves and try to help everyone else but themselves. Does this sound familiar to you as a loved one or a friend of your person? So the first and easiest thing that your person can do is to journal, and what you can do is make that happen. You can gently push the person to do it. You can buy a journal. You can set aside time for him or her to do it, and you can encourage him or her to let out unfiltered, uncensored thoughts. Reassure your person that even if that person has negative emotions about you, that it's okay and it's human to have mixed emotions about anyone. Encourage that person to let them out in the journaling process. Some people are going to benefit from working with a therapist, so you can also help by reminding your person that this is actually the work that's going to help him or her get better, rather than another visit to an acupuncturist or a massage therapist. The second to last thing that I wanted to talk about today was to remind your person that he or she is not broken. Your person is not broken. His or her nervous system is doing exactly what it was designed to do. It is responding emphatically to threat. It sees threat right now where there isn't strong threat, but it is responding appropriately and normally to threat. There is nothing wrong with your person's brain. This is a completely normal activity of a healthy nervous system. What we need to do is just teach the nervous system that there is not threat all around, and that is why we've talked extensively today about stress management and emotional awareness. The last thing that you can do for your person with dizziness is to learn more about psychophysiological disorders. You're welcome to explore here on my channel. You can even take the free course if you'd like. And on my website, which I will again link to below, there is a free dizziness resources sheet that you can download with books that I recommend to read to understand a little bit more about chronic dizziness. These books aren't about dizziness specifically, but they're written by physicians and other medical professionals who specialize in the treatment of other psychophysiological disorders like chronic pain, and exactly the same principles apply to your person who has dizziness. I hope this video was helpful. Your support to your person with dizziness really, really matters. So I am so glad that you made it through this whole video. If you have questions or comments, please drop them below. And if you enjoyed this video, if you found it useful, please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll talk to you guys soon.